Hi everyone, this is Becky from My Creative Life. Thanks for joining me for another art journal layout today. First up, I'm showing you this art journal layout I recently created, but I sadly lost the video. I deleted it by mistake, but I still wanted to show it to you guys here. I did use a mandala stencil, which I'll show you guys in just a few moments, and a Julie Nutting Girl doll stamp to create this layout with that really awesome galaxy type background. And if you're not following me on Instagram or on my Facebook page, go ahead, click the links in the description box so you can see layouts that I don't always share here on my YouTube channel. Now today I will be sharing a layout using this pattern paper, and that's from Simple Stories, and I'll be working in the 9x12 journal by Dylusions. Now you'll mostly see me use my 8x8 journal, which is the size I prefer, but I love this one here as well. It's just larger and I feel like I always have to fill it up. It takes a lot more to fill it up. But today with the pattern paper I'm using and how large these flowers are, I think it will work better in this journal. So I'm gonna begin by fussy cutting out my flowers using my craft knife. I'm using it right against that glass mat, my Tim Holtz glass mat, which makes it super easy to fussy cut out. I think this was a lot easier than doing it with a scissors. But once I get to the little butterflies, I will use the scissors instead because those are so tiny. So you can see I cut out one of the flowers. I'm doing the second one, which is a larger one right now. And here I am fussy cutting out those butterflies. Now I do not get rid of the center part of this paper. I will use the flip side, this teal side here, in a little bit, and you'll see how. But first up, I'm gonna work on my background. I'm gonna begin by stamping on my background using my black archival ink along with that crackle design, which is a bow bunny stamp. I'm gonna stamp all over there, but you end up not seeing that at all in the final layout, but that's okay. I probably will use the stamp again on a future layout. I really love that design. Now I'm gonna cover my background using some white gesso, and I'm doing that because once I add other mediums to this layout, it makes it so much easier to remove any color, any stamping, anything at all once I have that gesso on there first. So I'm going to use my Prima silicone brush, the wide one, and you can see I'm going to be able to get a very, very thin layer, and I'm doing a very thin layer, was hoping I would be able to see the stamping back there, but with all the layers I add on here, I end up not seeing that at all. So now I'm going to add some color, and I'm using some Dylusions paint today. And I'm adding a very little because I tend to add a lot, but you can add more. You cannot, it's a lot harder to take it off. So I added just a little. I'm using my Prima silicone brush once again, just swiping it across up and down on my background. And here I just do whatever I feel like. I have no idea at this point. I don't have a plan, I should say, of what I'm doing. I just go with the flow and use the colors that I like and keep going and going and going until I get the outcome that I want. So here you can see I added in the green, and I use a moist baby wipes just to spread that around. And I will go ahead and add all of the items I used today down in my description box along with the exact colors that I used. Now you'll notice I am not going off to the edge, and that's because I knew up front I will want a border around there, and my intentions was to add a border using maybe my distressed oxide inks or some black paint, but you'll see I go a different way in the end with that border. So now I'm going to tone down my background just a tiny bit using some titanium white paint, and I'm using my brayer in an up and down direction and across as well, side to side. And that adds a little bit of texture, and also it tones down a tiny bit my green and that blue background. And I think that blue is actually Balmy Night. Like I said, it is a Dylusions paint. So you can see my background is pretty bold right now. I'm going over it with once again with some more paint. This one I believe is from Dina Weekly, and I think it's apricot is the name of the color that I'm using. And I say this in almost all of my art journal process videos. Your layout is gonna go through that ugly stage, and this would be my ugly stage. And I think I have another ugly stage coming up, but this would be my very first ugly stage right here that you're looking at. So now I'm gonna lay down my flowers, which will be sort of my focal point on this page. And I'm going to use the Dina Wakley matte gel medium to add that to my background. That keeps it sealed in. I add a layer of that medium to the bottom, then to the top as well. It seals in those pieces. They're not going anywhere once that stick down there. And it looks glossy because it's wet, but it will dry matte. So it's like it's not there at all once it's all dried. So I'm going to go ahead, add one to the left page. And you can see I'm adding the smaller little cluster to the top right. So now I am going to add a border, and I'm using the strips that I saved. Actually, I ripped that piece of pattern paper, the flip side, the teal side, into strips. I'm going to add it as a border all the way around this page. And you'll see I cut the edge that's against the edge of the page straight, and the part that's inside on the page itself, I'm gonna have that with the ripped effect. So I'm gonna go ahead, use my matte gel medium right now, and add that all the way around. And I love how this turned out. Now you guys know I love having a dark border all the way around my layouts, but for this one I went a little lighter. Now at first I thought I would just stick with that teal color. I will darken it up eventually, but for now I am gonna go ahead and do a teal color using that Distress crayon. I believe the one I use would be Peacock something, or is it Mermaid Lagoon? I am not quite sure. I will add the exact color down below in the description box, but I'm going with that teal color right now to blend together with that pattern paper all the way around the layout. I'm using my moist baby wipes and blending that out. And having that matte gel medium on there, it makes it really easy to blend that out on that background. Here I'm darkening up just a little bit with some walnut stain. I believe it's the color from Distress ink. I cannot remember the exact colors that I used here. I just have a really rough idea of what it was. But I went with, I think it was the walnut stain first all the way around. And here I'm going in with the vintage photo. And that gave me the look I was going for all the way around, because that kind of blends in with that flower that's to the left. With that brown, it blends in a lot better and pulls out that color, so it's highlighted a bit more once I added that vintage photo. Now I want to tone down my background just a little bit to highlight my flowers. So I'm going in with some white gesso, and it looks really white right now, but it will fade out a bit once it's dried, and the color behind will come through a lot more than it looks right now. So I'm just going to go ahead and continue all the way around on my background and tone down the paints that I have going on, all of those colors I have going on right now. Now, once I'm done adding that white gesso, I went in with my big brush marker. I think this is the Faber-Castell markers, and I'm going to add that as an outline around my images. And just use either my finger that's moist from touching the baby wipes, or the actual baby wipe itself, and just blend those out. So that way it adds a sort of a vintage vibe to it, a distressed look actually, and it brings out those flowers. They're not faded into the background anymore. They're popping off the page at this point once I go ahead and outline them. So here I'm just going to continue adding a little bit more details around the flowers where I think I need it most. And you'll see right now that red flower up to the top right side is standing out by itself. I have no other red going on this page, but I will take care of that in a few minutes. But right now, I am bringing out the color once again on my background. I just felt I wasn't seeing the green and the teal, the blue actually, enough. So once again, I'm adding layers, and that's the whole thing about art journaling. Just keep adding and adding and adding a little bit at a time until you get the look that you're going for. So here I'm using the same colors I used before, and yes, this is my second ugly phase of my project, but I'm gonna go ahead add those two colors in once again. And you'll see I will go in with that peachy color as well. And I think here I'm adding a little bit of gesso, just a tiny bit where I felt it was just a bit too bold. And this is where I go in with that peachy color from Dina Wakley. And I'm going in with my baby wipes. That way I can wipe away if I think it's covering up that blue and green too much. So now I am adding splatters, and I love how this just brought everything together, but I'm not done yet, so don't go anywhere. I added these splatters. These are coppery gold splatters. I cannot remember the name of the ink, but it is acrylic ink that I'm using. And I just love how this looks on this background. So here I pulled out my frame stencil from Dylusions Dialogue, and I'm gonna use just that checkered design on there along with my blending tool and the vintage photo distress ink pad. I'm gonna add just a little bit of detail using that part of the stencil, and later on I use it some more, but for now I'm just adding that in just to add a tiny bit of detail. And next up I will work on my title. So for my title, I'm using some stamps today from Waffle Flowers. These are some really narrow alphabet stamps. And you'll see I'll stamp them on using my archival black ink pad. I'm not being very careful if the full stamp is outlined. I'm not being very careful if they're perfectly straight. This is an art journal layout. In my past videos, you guys know that I am not very fussy when it comes to my art journal layouts. I don't mind if it's messy or if things are not straight. And here I'm gonna go ahead and finish up. It says rain will make the flowers grow. And you saw I started with the last letter because I always know where I want it to end, and I just spell it backwards. Now I'm gonna outline my letters using this gold marker, but once I added that there, it was covering up the black a little bit too much, even though I tried not to cover up all the black. So I'm gonna go in with my Faber-Castell black brush marker here, and I'm gonna outline those alphas and making sure that I don't cover up all of the gold. Now once I'm done working on the title, I use a fine tip Sharpie, and I'm gonna outline just a few of those squares from that stencil work that I did earlier, just to make sure that you can see that detail on this layout. And I do not cover up, I do not outline all of them, just a few here and there. So now, like I said before, I have that red flower to the top right corner. I have nothing else red on this layout, so I wanted to bring in just a little bit more red just to balance out my colors. So I decided to go ahead and punch out some leaves, and I am using pattern paper from 49th and Market. I punched out my leaves and added it to the bottom there next to that yellow and brown flower. And I'm gonna go ahead and yes, I pulled out the crackling campfire from Tim Holtz from Distress Oxide Inks. Once again, I absolutely love this ink pad. If you do not already own this ink pad, it might be one you want to add to your collection. I'll have this linked in my description box if you're interested, but I have been using this ink pad on so many projects lately on my scrapbook layouts, which you can find on my second channel. I'll have that linked down below as well, and a lot of my art journal layouts that I share here on this channel. So here you can see I pulled it in. I am gonna go over my entire layout, just blending in a little bit of that color, and that helps balance out that red flower that I had standing all alone by itself on the top right. And now I'm just gonna darken up the edges a little bit more, and I'm gonna use that same vintage photo ink pad from Distress Inks here and darken up the edges. So here I am gonna go in and I'm gonna add some more stenciling, and that's with the crackling campfire. You can see I have some empty spaces all the way around throughout my title, so I'm gonna use the stencil just to fill in some of those spaces. And of course I'm gonna add the stenciling elsewhere just to balance things off. And I go in with the black Sharpie once again and outline just a few of those squares, not all of them. So I absolutely love how this turned out. Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you enjoy the process, be sure to give me a thumbs up before you leave. And don't forget, go ahead and check out my description box and join me on Instagram and on Facebook so you can follow me there for any projects I do not add here to my YouTube channel. And I want to thank you all for watching today. So until next time, bye.